Hey friends, C.Note here. I have been thinking about this mental wellness thing for a little while and trying to figure out where it's going to go next. It's been this sort of seed in my mind, this like blurry mountain in the distance that I'm trying to get some clarity around, like what it is and where I'm going. I just did a post about it recently talking about how this really is starting to feel like fully in alignment with where I'm going. And it's been a thing that's been a through line throughout my story, right? I didn't really choose mental health. I didn't look at the world struggling or anything and like say I want to be a therapist, so there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, that wasn't my arc. My story arc is that I struggled a lot as a kid and had some challenges at home, but then also challenges with myself, and then challenges relative to like where I grew up and the institutions I was a part of and all of that stuff. And then getting into the working world and struggling to figure that out. There's obviously like the regular day to day challenges of all of that, but I was dealing with a lot of peaks and crashes and all of that stuff. I've documented my story over and over in various places, but the idea being that it's been a consistent through line. And I can't ignore it. Lately, I've been feeling like there's this like pulse in my body that is just this feeling that I can't do anything else than like discover and do whatever it is my purpose is. Whatever it is like the thing that I was born to do, and I've denied it over and over again. But I think I'm getting closer. I don't know that I know what the thing is, but I think it's it's somewhere around this mental wellness idea. I'd done a couple of the mental wellness open mic nights. Those were really lovely. And really starting to approach this from the perspective of like what the experience is like as an individual, right? Not just the person who is struggling with mental health, but the individual who is like the family member that doesn't know how to help someone, the teacher that doesn't know how to help a child, the parent that doesn't know how to help their child, the boss or the nonprofit institution leader that doesn't know how to deal with a person. Like, what does that look like? And I don't necessarily have clear answers for all of that yet, but I'm starting to think of myself as this junction box between people who do know what to do, right? Because there are these like disparate elements out there. There are therapists, there are counselors, there are coaches, there are consultants, there are creative professionals who are teaching skills. There's all sorts of avenues that people can go down to improve their mental health and have a better life experience. And that's why I emphasize like mental wellness. It's about improving your life experience, right? Mental illness is dealing with all of the clinical stuff, and when things have gotten so dire that you need professional advice, support, or chemical balancing of some kind, right? And then mental health is more advocacy and awareness, and even if it's self-awareness of like something's off, something's not right, and I need help. I need to consult someone for like where to go next. And I see mental wellness as like the elevation of those two ideas, not to dismiss them, but to add to it, to say like, how can we start to take on various practices in our lives or various systems like understanding personality types to understand when maybe we're under-resourced or undernourished in a certain area. How can we get fed? How can we get ourselves like nourished and get that chemical hit that we need? Not in a addicted dopamine hit kind of way, but how do we balance the scales of what our life experience is and can be? And for me, it's like, it's such an interesting time and opportunity to think about these things because, first of all, as far as I know, there hasn't been a time in history where so many people are thinking about this, for better or worse, like, or trying to figure stuff out relative to this, which is like new in human history at scale, right? I mean, as far as I know, the 60s were like this awakening of, this human potential movement. There's like the consciousness awakening, Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, all of that stuff. and this notion that we can be liberated, free human beings, and then on the inside we can experience growth and development in a conscious way, or be aware of like the difficulties of the world, the challenges of industrialism, and then how does that relate to ourselves and what we have contributed to our lives? How have we been the hero of our story and then also the villain of our story, right? Because with every light comes a shadow. And even in the 60s, like, it's like the 70s were the shadow of the 60s. And it's, you kind of see this like with a lot of good things comes challenges that come with it. And usually we just have to make the choice of figuring out what's worth the effort of keeping the light going, if that makes sense. And so I think about all the time how the last mental institution, like the ones that you see in horror movies and ghost stories and all of that stuff, like the last big mental institution closed in 1994. There are still psych wards. There are still all sorts of stuff around mental I guess you could call it mental health support, but to varying degrees, right? But institutions and all of that is not necessarily my strength. But I think that there are a lot of people in the world trying to figure out how to better those things. And then there are also people who are trying to either take advantage of them or they're just trying to get by, right? They're like this, they're trying to, keep their kid in an institution to just like, I don't want to have to deal with it. Or there's just varying perspectives, right? So it's not necessarily that people are good or bad, but sometimes it's like in the instance of the person that I was talking about, where you're the person who is like, there's someone outside with like a loud radio. In a case of like a person who's like running an institution or like a family member or a friend that's like, I don't have experience, I don't know what to do with you. Sometimes you just like, they cast them out, or they put them in, used to put kids in like boarding schools and stuff like that. I mean, they still do that, but it used to be just like handing them off. And that was another symptom of like kind of the late 70s into the 80s, was just like starting to hand people off to cults and religions and institutions and stuff like that. And not really knowing what to do with like how to help someone who is either struggling or not being disciplined or whatever the thing is, right? So I kind of think of things in four main categories. And if it's really like the split between interior and exterior, meaning our internal world and the external world, like interior happenings, like what are my thoughts, what are my feelings, and then sensations, and even just like patterns that we form. And then the exterior being like literally the world around us, what we experience, other people that we experience, stuff like that. And then there's the individual, and then there's the collective. So individual, one person; collective, multiple people as a unit in some shape or form. And then you combine those things and they become like this way of operating. So for me, I tend to focus on the interior individual. So it's like, what is going on for the person psychologically, philosophically, what are their values, and values about society, or values about themselves, or values about like, what is their story, what's going on interior in their interior that like motivates them, or what are their core principles, like how do they navigate existing, and sometimes what are their thought processes around that, because sometimes just tweaking that or tuning that creates a better experience for a lot of people. And that's what I feel like I do really well, or can do really well, or at least diagnose and understand where someone's interior world is, so that then they can navigate themselves, or I can push them to someone that can help them with another category, like exterior individual, which may be just like what you're experiencing, literally what your environment is, who you're spending time around, or where you're spending your time. Are you in nature a lot? Are you inside a lot? What city are you in? Are you in a certain climate that's affecting your psychology, right? So the exterior has an effect on the interior, but it's how the exterior has an effect on the individual, right? And some people primarily focus on that, and I think that's amazing. And then there are people who focus on the exterior collective, which is like, how do we as people, as a unit, make something happen? How do we, gather a bunch of people to volunteer to go paint a school? Or how do we set up a system that has all of these different roles and people in place to feed the homeless, right? Like someone may be focusing on that kind of thing. Or that may be their natural strength. They may be trying to focus on that, but it may not necessarily be their strength. But I think each of us have like sort of natural attunements to these categories, and I think it's important for us to take the time to figure out what that attunement might be, if that's like where you're at. And then there's the interior collective, which is like human development. What are the patterns about like how the collective unconscious, right? The idea of that to some degree we all kind of think the same things, or we might have the same ideas. And then also, how do I as an individual navigate institutions, or how do I navigate social situations? Understanding how do I get through, these collective scenarios, and then how can I as an individual influence them? That's a big old question that a lot of people approach. And I think when you think about spiral dynamics and big developmental models, I think that is a big focus there. So, you might naturally attune to what one of these categories, but I'm finding that I've tried to do all of them, but I think the thing that's ultimately the thing for me is the individual interior, the psychology of myself. And by understanding myself, I can usually also get curious about other people and start to understand their interior. So how all of this leads to what I'm thinking is that I don't want to be a therapist. I don't really want to be like a psychologist or any sort of like formal teacher or support or anything like that. I actually think I'm more of a junction box. Like, I think I'm pretty good at diagnosing where someone's at, whether that's developmentally or in their mental state, or if their environment is kind of in shambles, or if they're being asked to do things that they don't want to do, sort of like identifying where they need help. Like, which of these 4 categories, for example, that's just one framework, but which of these 4 categories are they trying to do, or are they getting sucked into, or are they having trouble with, right? And then through these categories, I can then help them say, like, go see this therapist that does this specialty about this thing. Go see this consultant who can help you get into action in this way and do this thing, right? Or go learn about this framework from this person to help you navigate, the working world. Or go talk with, go learn about your interior world through, learning about personality systems, go to this place. So it's like personality profilers that I'm connected to, therapists, people who are formally doing work, some of them personality type informed, coaches or counselors, people who are doing work around creativity or inner work that involves exterior action or change, like changing your environment or changing what you're doing. And then like the consultants that are people that can give you action steps, right? So I'm starting to think about this call for people who are therapists and coaches and consultants and like creative counselors or personality profilers to have them work with me to kind of diagnose and figure out where they're at, and then splinter them off to where they need to go next. And so the challenge is that this is just kind of a big fuzzy vision. It feels connected, it feels aligned, because I really love this notion of improving the mental wellness of the world, right? Uplifting the collective consciousness, so to speak. If you think of the humanity as like this collective human organism, it's we're at a certain level of consciousness, right? The newest thing being awarenesses of our interior world, talking more and more about our mental health, more entertainment that's talking about the complexities of the interior experience, not and plenty of things that are talking about like bettering the environment. You can see these four categories really lightening up around this idea of wellness, which is like improving our environment, improving our systems, improving how people treat each other and work together, and then improving how we experience reality and how we philosophize about the world, improving our philosophies, or improving our understanding, or improving our value set, the way that we see ourselves, the way that we value ourselves. It's it's those categories are like big important things that I think navigates and helps pull the world into a better place. And I say better place because I don't have this. This is work that I know that if I continue down this road, it's like this is lifelong experience, and this is like also beyond my lifetime. I don't have this illusion that I'm going to quote unquote save the world. I don't actually think the world needs saving. And I know that's not a popular opinion, because when you think about these four categories, it's like there's doom and gloom everywhere. But a big thing for me is like nothing is broken. People are just operating the way that we know how to operate, right? We're just trying to figure it out. We're doing the best to get through the experience of it all. And so it's a really big challenge to get people on board with that. I'm not trying to convince anyone of that philosophy, but I'm trying to not get too big for my britches, because I think something that's really important to have, and one of the most important principles for me, is that acknowledging our insignificance is one of the most powerful things that we can understand about ourselves to improve our mental health, right? Like, thinking that we can save the world is like grandiosity, right? It's making ourselves, this one individual out of 8 billion, officially out of January 1st, it's 8 billion people, that we are the ones, or me and my 12 friends are going to save the world, or me and my city will all be on the same exact page and save the world, or me and my entire country will get together and save the world. It's a little naive, if I'm honest, and I don't want to perpetuate that necessarily. I don't think that's helpful to keep thinking. I mean, you got to go through it, right? You got to try. And I don't want to stop anyone from trying. But in terms of how I want to approach things, it's really about subtle influence and helping where I can help, right? And doing, not helping in like a self-sacrificing way. Like, I'm not trying to atone for anything. I'm not feeling any kind of guilt. It just feels like this is why I'm here. This is what I'm doing. This is what lights my brain up, is to kind of diagnose what's going on in someone's mind and give them some direction to get some clarity from another person who might tell them something different and guide them down a different road. But ultimately, like, the major thing that I want to support is agency and sovereignty, right? Because we're quickly moving towards a world where we've got a lot of people my age, a lot of millennials, who are lonely because, let's face it, we all kind of suck socially. we're not great at making small talk because we're so very much busy and focused on these abstract big ideas. Not abstract in the sense that they aren't totally real, but they're abstract in the way that we don't really know all of the details, like us as an individuals. Like, I don't know the details of climate change. I just don't know all of the little details. I can research and learn a bunch of things, and I have a gist of it. But because I understand that gist of it, forming a lot of emotions around just the gist of it ends up impacting how we see the world, who we interface with, and we end up creating these like kind of mini cults that become these divisions that we're all wrestling with, right? Instead, like, we're not getting to know humans. We're not really taking the time to understand individual to individual, right? And that's all I want to provide, because us as individuals have influence amongst a lot of people that we're connected to. It's like the six degrees of Kevin Bacon thing. It's a yes and, right? It's like, I don't necessarily have the individual vision or ability to change the world on my own. but I also am not so individual and useless that I can't impact anyone. Right? It's like finding the modesty and the healthy balance. Like, modesty is not necessarily about the extreme version of it where you are just not doing anything and you're super disciplined and you're not impacting anyone at all. But it's also not so grandiose that you think you're hot shit when you're not. Right? So it's fine tuning to understand, like, this is what I'm good at, this is how I can help, and this is how I get out of my own way to be able to do that. So this is me acknowledging for myself that this is what I'm good at. And all of the other things I keep trying to do, I'm just getting in my own way and I'm getting in other people's way and slowing things down, right? And so I'm trying to both become more efficient in how I can, like, really live my life on a day-to-day basis that feels good and gets my needs met and gets me resourced and all of that stuff. But I also just, I don't want to waste a talent that seems to be something I have that I'm emerging awareness around, that's moving energy. It's that if someone works with me, I figure out where the thing is a little off, and then I'm like, okay, here you go. It's like going to a general mechanic, and then you're like, okay, you need tires from this place, go here. You know, that kind of vibe. It's like that's kind of the energy that Molly used, the idea of the operator, because we talked about this. She's like, you're kind of like the switchboard operator, right? And I think that's where I'm going. I don't have the details of how I'm going to, like, offer that and make that a regenerative, money producing thing, because it needs to. I need to make a living. You need to make a living. This needs to be regenerative. And even, like, if it helps the person that I'm supporting and serving, if it leads them to eventually making money, like, fantastic. So part of it is like a referral network. Part of it is the ability of all of these places intermixing. Like, they don't have to go through me. It's like, if a therapist needs to work with a profiler, they can connect on their own, and everyone can get referral fees from each other, consultants, and all of these places, right? So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in terms of the specifics there. The next step for me, I think, is figuring out, probably doing my own personality profiling first, but then if someone's having a challenge in a specific area, starting to identify and build the network around who I can send them to. So if you stuck around this long and have watched this video, clearly you were already interested in what I'm doing, and I'm curious about, you know, what you're doing or working on. You know, don't sweat if it's a big thing or not a big thing. Like, it doesn't have to be. It's just like, if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's just about finding better ways that we all interconnect as individuals to serve the greater whole of humanity, as improving the health of the overall organism, in the same way that you might heal certain cells in your body and it helps the rest of the organism heal, right? And you know, any improvement of the world's consciousness, or like the overall wellness of the planet, of humanity as a part of the planet, is going to come from, you know, individuals and various collectives, and people really slotting into what I think are these four main categories to step into their unique genius and do things that make a living, that support our survival, that support connection, that support thriving and living well, and, you know, increase the overall consciousness, like I said, right? So I'm trying to find other things, but I think that's the gist of what was in my head that I wanted to share as this thing is starting to slowly unfold. And as I get more clarity, I'll probably do more videos just to share what's coming up for me. And chances are more of what you'll see of me is going to be about those ideas of, like, improving our internal code in a way, like our philosophies, the way that we can think about our wellness on a day-to-day basis. You know, I'm not necessarily a practices person. Again, that's why I, like, refer people to other people. But it is like, have you ever thought about this way? You know, that kind of thing. And you'd be amazed at how often just, like, a little tweak can send your life into a better trajectory. And I think that's ultimately the idea, is to better our experience and improve uh, our lives for ourselves. All right. I think I'm circling the drain here. So I appreciate you for watching. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about this? What's coming up for you? Are you a therapist? Do you work with nonprofits or a business? Or are you a coach, consultant, creativity? Molly's a creativity doula, like something like that. Are you helping someone to unlock inner work through creative practices? Are you a personality profiler? Do you work with personality types, the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, spiral dynamics, anything like that? I think is something that I'm trying to build through kind of a word of mouth network, not necessarily something that's going to be like an official big old institution thing, maybe eventually, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's just me trying to help and do what I do best. All right. I'm not good at endings, but I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.